This is Alex Swallow, the influence expert, and this is the second video in the Big Ideas series. In the Big Ideas series, I try to introduce a topic to you that needs a certain amount of time for me to explain it. I also have a series called 1 Minute Influence, where I address an influence tip in a minute or less. But I realized that I needed to shoot a few videos to explain some bigger topics. And the topic I want to talk to you about today is about personal branding. Now, I'm going to talk to you about how I think that you should have a personal brand, why I think it's important, and try to convince you that you should think about having one and think about why you already have one. But what I'm not going to do is to explain to you about exactly how to create one. That might be the subject of another video, and I'll certainly write about it on the website. It's one of the core components of my LEAPS model. But I want to talk to you really more about why it is that I think you need to realize that you have a personal brand. In my view, like it or not, everybody in the modern world has a personal brand. So if you have a presence only on a small amount of websites, then that's your personal brand. If you have no presence at all on any of the major social networking sites, then that's your personal brand as well. Your personal brand is just somebody who can't be found on those sites. Doesn't mean that you don't have a personal brand. That says something about you. Perhaps it says something about the privacy you want. Perhaps it says something about that you want to be individual and don't want to follow the herd. Or in some cases, it might just say that you don't have the time to set up one of these social media profiles, or that you perhaps don't value being represented in a certain way online. But those things all have positives and negatives. But the important thing is to realize that they say to another person that you have a particular perspective on things, and that is your personal brand. So you have a personal brand already. If you search for some people's name on Google, for example, and bearing in mind that some people have unusual names, which are quite difficult to find, meaning that if you find a profile, it's more than likely to be them. Whereas if you're called, for example, John Smith, unless you're a very famous John Smith, you're unlikely to be the first John Smith that we find online. So if you're not the first John Smith we find online and your name's John Smith, doesn't mean that you're doing a terrible job of representing yourself. It just means you've got a more common name. But keeping those things aside, when we look for you online, what is it that we find? Do we find a link to a personal website, by which I mean a website you control? Is there links to showing what business you're involved in, what your profession is? Is there anything that shows your expertise in a particular subject? Do you have online profiles on the major sites? And if you do, are they filled out properly? So, for example, LinkedIn, which I'm very keen on, as many people who know me know that I'm a big fan of LinkedIn. But if you're on LinkedIn, do you have a properly filled out profile? Do you have a professional photo? Or is it a photo of you on a beach with a pina colada? And what does your summary of your profile say? Does it really speak about who you are? So all these things are important in looking at somebody's online personal brand. But also, of course, what's your personal brand in terms of people who meet you? So if somebody met you at an event, what's the impression they might get of you? What's your general reputation out there in the world? That's your personal brand. Are you a person who's known as being particularly interested and particularly knowledgeable about a particular subject? Are you a person who stands out in any way? And there's all sorts of ways in which people could stand out. Obviously, the positive things, there's somebody who's an expert in something, there's somebody who's knowledgeable, there's someone who we want to learn from. And also things like, do they come across as a nice person? And that's the part of the L part of LEAPS, looking at likability in the LEAPS model. So are they a likable person? Do they come across well? Are they friendly? Do they seem to care about other people? So that might be part of your personal brand in a positive sense. But obviously, you could have a personal brand in a negative sense. Either you might just be a person that seemingly nobody likes, and I hope that's not the case, or you might just come across as a person who does okay in the things that you do, but does nothing particularly special. So you don't seem to be a particular expert in anything. You don't really represent yourself very effectively online. You don't come across with having passions about particular things. Perhaps you're not a person who is socially particularly stands out. So if people met you in real life, they wouldn't remember you. You also might not be a very good networker, so they might not remember you because you didn't introduce yourself properly, or you didn't give your business card. If some people think that you don't really need business cards these days, but whatever, you didn't find a way to make sure that they were going to contact you outside you meeting them for the first time. But so there's lots of ways in which a positive personal brand, can be positive or negative. But my point really is that you have one, whether you want one or not. You already have one. And what I think you should be aiming to do is to control your personal brand a little bit. Now, of course, there are always examples out there in the world, sometimes quite famous examples, of people who get a bad reputation and then it's hard for them to change their reputation in the eyes of the public. So there's some sort of scandal with a politician or scandal with a celebrity, and that person becomes particularly known for that thing, that negative thing. Even then, though, there can be rehabilitation in other people's eyes, and there can be damage control, and that's what a good PR agency will be able to do, and that's what somebody will work very hard, perhaps, to control the negative fallout from a particular event. But also, just we may have things that stick in the minds of other people, or we may not. But many people just don't particularly stand out and don't have anything particularly online that is going to differentiate them from other people. And that means that it's much harder for people who don't have a brand that can be differentiated to really get their ideas out there into the world, maybe to get the jobs they want because they don't stand out, maybe even to have a lifestyle they want, maybe even to attract the type of friends they want and the people they like to hang around socially. Maybe they don't come across as a curious person who wants to learn from other people. Maybe they don't come across as a collaborative person who wants to put their ideas forward, but also to learn from the ideas of others. Whatever your personal brand is currently saying, if it's not being controlled by you, and if it's not working for you in the way that you want it to, then you have a problem. And that doesn't mean that if that's the case for you, that you should give up all hope. There's a lot of things that you can do. But the first step is just realizing that you have a personal brand, that you should control that personal brand, and that if that personal brand is not something you want, that you need to do something about it. So that was a big idea for you. I hope I explained that properly. I hope you found that of use. If you're interested in some of the things I've been saying, please check out my other videos. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. And please check out the website, which is www.theinfluenceexpert.com. I'm Alex Swallow, the Influence Expert. Thank you very much for your time, and good luck in growing your own influence.